Hey, and welcome back to the channel. So this is going to be the first video in a new series that I'm going to start working on, where I'm going to be drawing well-known, recognizable characters from major studios. In this case, I'm going to be starting probably with a bunch of Disney characters, because those are the ones I'm very familiar with and comfortable with. And today we're starting with MOANA. So I thought this would be a fun project to do because I'll be drawing characters that everybody can recognize, people will remember, and just kind of going at it as if I'm trying to draw these characters with my own stylizations, painting and drawing the things that I notice, the things that tend to stand out to me. Basically treating it the same way that I would like drawing a commission for somebody, so starting off with like a basic sketch, just kind of figuring out the general shape, the way I kind of want the item move around the illustration, just kind of getting a sense of the scenery. So then I'm going to start going in with kind of refining a sketch. So I do like the first sketch that I kind of do is kind of messy, just kind of like getting a posture and general like pose down, kind of figuring out where I want the background to kind of like pull your eye here and there and kind of like the weight of the piece. So that's what the first sketch is really going to be, and then the second one is going to be going in and going, okay, well, I kind of have the shape down, I need to figure out what the anatomy is going to look like and what I actually want this character to be posed like, what, you know, how their details are going to kind of come through when I do the line art, because if I jump from that basic sketch to a line art, it's going to get a little confusing sometimes when you zoom in and try to work on the details and everything. I get a little lost in all of that, so I kind of have to do two sketches now, and then kind of go in with like a line art afterwards. In this case, I'm trying to figure out how to render hair a little bit differently. I talked about that very briefly in the last video that I uploaded a while ago. So in this case, I am sketching her hair out, but it's just there as a reference so that I kind of know what to do later. What I end up doing is I end up painting in the hair, doing line art, and treating the rest of it pretty traditionally the way I normally would anyway. So for this portion of the video, I'm just kind of working on the background. It's a pretty simple, like little beachy seaside sort of landscape. I really love these tall towering cliffs that you see in areas like this in this kind of region. It's very specific. It's very like memorable, almost iconic. Like you know roughly where geographically you are just seeing those cliffs along the beach. And then I don't really get to paint a whole lot of water, especially like the ocean or the seaside, so I got to do a little bit of that with this one. Clouds are really fun. Something that I remember growing up near kind of the water, near beaches and things, is that the clouds aren't just like super high up in the sky. They come all the way down to the horizon. They just go and go and go forever. They're big, fluffy, plushy looking things. So in this case I follow the same kind of system that I have been for a little while, where I do a couple of sketches and then I go ahead and start painting in the background so that I have a nice sense of the scene, the colors, the atmosphere. And then I can move on to drawing in the character and coloring them. That is the most time intensive and tedious part for me personally. And then I can move on to finishing the character and then turn on that little background and see it all starting to come together a lot faster than if I started with the character and then still had to paint the background. Alright, and then after the line art portion, we're going to move into the coloring. So right now I'm kind of finalizing details. I really like drawing eyebrows on characters. I don't care what gender they are. I love spending that time putting the eyebrows on. That seems to be kind of like a bit of a theme in a lot of the art that I do. And then we can move on to coloring the character. I really like to spend some time getting some details into the eyes, kind of having some shading and darkening around the two edges of the iris, and then bringing some brightness into the center. And then for the next segment of this video, I'm basically putting in a bunch of flat colors, trying not to spend a whole lot of time on details, but for things like her little pendant here, I'm going to go ahead and paint in some darker edges and brighter sections in the center, just to kind of give it a little bit of depth. Other than that, for the most part, I'm going to stick to flats for everything else, and then kind of go on to other layers to add in details, little color patterns like on her skirt. For the design that I went for, I didn't really copy exactly what she looks like in the film, but I was looking at a bunch of the Gen Chem sketches and concept art that he did of this character, so I kind of went with that outfit because I really liked the colors there and kind of the contrast between like her darker, almost like orangey skin and then the lighter, paler tones in her outfit. So then for the next little while, I'm just kind of working on some details. Initially I was just going to paint these as like little dark spots, like markings almost on her skirt, but then I realized that no, those are holes. those are gaps at the bottom, so you can definitely see through them. So you need to be able to see the skirt underneath, you need to be able to see the water kind of behind her and the inside of the skirt as it wraps around behind. And then we're moving on to the hair here, obviously. I'm experimenting with a couple of different brushes. Part of what I want this series to do is to kind of let me like have fun with this and play with this and try a couple of different things that I'm otherwise feeling too strict to try with my own art. Because usually I kind of just go in with things that I know work, I know how this is going to look, it's predictable, this has worked for me in the past, I don't want to spend a bunch of time messing around and trying things if it's not going to work. But I need to do more of that because I have a bunch of really cool brushes in my art projects and I would really like to learn how to use them. I need to learn how to render differently, and I figured that this could be a fun little experiment to do because I'll be drawing characters that we're all familiar with and know. And I'll want to capture the likeness, of course, but then I can also kind of play with different settings, different brushes, try different things that I haven't done before and kind of see what works. So shading is definitely a part that I do look forward to with a lot of these pieces, and I really like this almost scrubby, like pencil-y kind of brush. It makes me really happy to use it. I pretty much always gravitate towards this thing for shading. This is also the same brush that I used for the lines. It's generally the same brush I will sometimes use for landscaping and kind of blocking in colors too, because it's a pretty organic looking shape and texture, and I kind of like to use that as just kind of the basis for everything. Like I said, I used to use the really soft round things, soft round brushes, tried to make things look really clean, smooth, but I seem to like this kind of rougher, like I said, sort of pencil-y texture on pretty much everything, so I try to pick and choose where I'm going to use it, but I definitely use this brush at least a few times in pretty much everything that I do. And for people curious, I will add the links in the description below. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between a couple of brush packs. They're all free. One of them comes from Evanet Design here on YouTube. He has a really lovely brush pack that honestly a lot of other people use. Like I see Aaron Blaze use some of those brushes. I've seen a bunch of other artists on here use brushes that came from the same brush pack. And then the Ghibli Studio brushes, they gave out their brushes, I think it was a couple of years ago at this point, now for free, and I grabbed those at that time. So the shading process definitely takes a little while. It's a little tedious sometimes. This is when I like to put a show on my other screen, and since I'm not really looking at references too much at this point, I can just kind of watch something while painting. And lately I've been watching a lot of like garden tour videos, or videos where people are kind of explaining, this is how I learned how to raise this plant, or these are the mistakes I made last time, here's what I did to make it work better this time. I'm having a great time kind of trying to learn how to garden, because I've never done that before. Like, we never really had a garden growing up. I grew up in Florida where you put something outside, it either thrived by itself or it died. And I didn't really know how to take care of plants, and neither did anybody else that I grew up with. So learning about all these different needs and how this plant needs a little more potassium than that one really likes the nitrogen, this one doesn't need anything because it'll just get suffocated. It's kind of crazy how different all these plants are, and yet they all kind of need similar things. You can kind of make your own fertilizer. That's what I've been getting really into lately, is just having the ingredients to make my own little batches of things to feed each of these different plants, and I'm really excited for future harvests. So I'm really looking forward to that. At this point I'm just doing a bunch of overlay and kind of painting over it just to kind of adjust the colors a little bit, because she was looking a little bit too cool toned, and I really wanted to emphasize the fact that, like, this person's out in the sun a lot. They live outside. They're gonna have, I don't want to say sunburn necessarily, but like, you know, those little redness on the shoulders, redness on the outside of the arms, the cheeks and everything. Characters that I know spend a lot of time outside, I definitely spend a little bit more time kind of flushing up the skin in those areas. And then the hair, like I said, was a really big experiment with this piece. I'm really happy with some parts of it, and some of it was just kind of like, meh, I mean, it's okay. Like, I don't dislike it, I'm not upset about it, but I feel like I could probably figure out a better way to do this. So I'm going to keep trying things. I'm going to keep experimenting and trying new things with some of the new characters I'm going to be drawing for future videos. But for this one, I think I did okay. Like, I think the point gets across. It looks like hair. I like the texture of it. Right now there's still line art on because I wasn't sure how I wanted to handle that, and I was like, well, maybe I want some of these thicker pieces up front to have enough dimension and for them to really stand out, and just go ahead and do the line art for them. But I ultimately end up just kind of painting over them, just kind of having them merge into the hair in the background anyway. I really enjoy drawing hair though. I think it's really fun. Playing with the textures is always exciting. She has narrower, like coiling kind of curls. I have a character that you'll definitely be seeing plenty on this channel that has curly hair also, but it's like looser, almost like a combination of wavy curly, and Moana's hair is definitely those tighter kind of coily curls. They're not really ringlets, they're not like super dense, but they're definitely more coily, and I needed to kind of figure out how to get that texture across because I'm used to kind of having tighter curls up top and then kind of making them more wavy and loose towards the bottom, which I started to do several times in this painting, and then kind of realized what I was doing and going, no, you're not drawing your character, you're drawing a different character that has different hair texture and different prior properties. So I had to go back in and kind of like tighten up the curls towards the bottom a couple of times. And I really like the strand of hair that's peeking out from behind her arm down there by the little like bandana that she has tied around her skirt. I tried to add a couple more like crazy flyaways up here just because I really like unruly hair, like thick hair that just kind of does what it wants to do. It's not super uniform. I really like emphasizing that when I'm drawing these kinds of characters. Something else that I've been getting into recently, especially while doing these videos, just sitting down and drawing for several hours at a time and just experimenting and playing around, is trying to make fun little like tea beverages at home. So I made a really good one this week with mango juice and peach tea bags and a little bit of agave nectar. Super good. Poured over ice, add a little bit of water because I accidentally made it a little too strong, but it is amazing. And now we're moving on to coloring some of the line art. This kind of helps me balance out the colors and makes it a little bit less like in your face striking that there's line art there. I really like to kind of do this after the shading because then I can go in and make sure that the shaded areas of the character, you know, where the line art is touching a shaded area needs to be just a little bit darker than that shadow is. Then I can go in and kind of balance out that versus her natural skin tone, and then I can go in with like the overlay layers and kind of get her colors to match the background that she's kind of standing on so she doesn't look super stark. I tried kind of working with local colors, but they looked really wild because Moana's skin tone, if you've ever tried to like color pick it, is super like intense pinky orange. And I initially started trying to work with a local color with that, but it just looked so bizarre, it looked super crazy, so I ended up just kind of eyeballing and trying to pick what I would go for if I were painting like a Polynesian kind of character. I think it worked out pretty well. She doesn't look too orange, she doesn't look too pink, but to get her to kind of blend in with the background a little bit, I needed to introduce some of those blue hues that are back there, especially towards like the back, like where her hair is, kind of reflecting in the light, the backside of her skirt. Some of the shading has a little bit more of like a blue hue kind of hidden in there. And then I'm adding a little bit of bounce light, like rim lighting around areas where they are shaded, but there's still a lot of reflective light from the environment that she's in. So this was a really fun experiment. I'm really excited to do more of these and start painting more characters. If you have a character you'd really like to see painted next, let me know. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video. This finished piece will be posted to my Blue Sky if you want to check it out. See you next time.